Peace to everybody, back with another video. This is at least 70 arrested at New York City protests over death of George Floyd. And as you can see here in the picture is one of the protesters that allegedly got arrested by the police in New York City. There was like 70 people altogether that got arrested. Crowds created havoc in Lower Manhattan on Thursday during a protest against the police-involved death of George Floyd. Yeah, so there was crowds that created havoc in Lower Manhattan on Thursday during a protest against the police-involved death of George Floyd. Clashes with cops lead to at least 70 arrests in the latest national demonstration sparked after Floyd, who was black, died in police custody on Monday. So Memorial Day, George Floyd had was on the ground by the police officer and allegedly killed him because the guy at the store had called the police saying, "Oh, there's a guy in here forging a check or whatnot." And of course the cop he got away with it, but the next day the officer got fired along with the 3 other officers the next day. Then Tuesday, another video leaked out showing that what led up to George Floyd's alleged murder. Widely circulated cell phone video showed Floyd at 46, old father crying out, "I can't breathe," as a white cop knelt on his neck for several minutes. So George Floyd was 46 years old. He was crying out, "I can't breathe," as a white cop knelt on his neck for several minutes. And of course he was a father too. So he did have kids with his girlfriend. Dozens of demonstrators, many in protective face masks but otherwise flouting social distancing rules, marched around the park and then down to City Hall chanting, "No justice, no peace, and blank the police." Yeah, so there was dozens of demonstrators. Many were in protective masks, face masks, but otherwise flouting social distancing rules. In other words, they didn't care about the social distancing rules because they are out here outraged over George Floyd's death. Rules marched around the park and then down to City Hall chanting, "No justice, no peace, and blank the police." And of course, here's another picture of the alleged arrest that is going on. Clashes erupted between the protesters and the scores of officers who responded, with video on social media showing cops taking people down to the ground. So yeah, the police were taking people down to the ground. They were clashes erupted between the protesters and the scores of officers who responded. And this is in New York City. Police sources said some protesters threw bottles at the cops, and one officer was injured after having a trash can tossed at him. Yeah, so you got bottles thrown at the officers. There was trash cans that were tossed at them. So, and I mean, New York City is not exactly what you expect it to be, but then of course there's a lot of things going on. At least 5 of the arrests were made near East 13th Street and 4th Ave. So this is where it happened at. At least 5 of the arrests were made at near East 13th Street and 4th Ave. Of the 33 arrests, at least one was for criminal possession of a weapon, for someone who allegedly had a knife at the protest, and one was for assaulting a police officer for the person accused of throwing the garbage pail. Alright, so out of all 33 of them, there was one of them that had a weapon, allegedly had a knife at the protest, and then another one got caught for throwing the garbage pail at the police. Another person tried to grab a cop's gun while someone else was charged with blocking a roadway, the sources said. Yeah, so then you have another person that tried to grab the police officer's gun. So we know where that was going to go after that. Riots in Minneapolis over the past 2 nights have turned violent, with stores being vandalized and burned in some cases, as protesters call for the officers involved in Floyd's death to be charged. Yeah, so after the riots that were happening in Minneapolis, Minnesota, last night and the night before, have turned violent, with stores being vandalized and burned in some cases, that protesters call for the officers involved in Floyd's death to be charged. So that's what they were doing. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz on Thursday evening activated the state's National Guard in an apparent attempt to keep the peace. Protesters have also marched in Los Angeles to demand justice in Floyd's death. So you got this Minnesota governor who's part of the deep state, Tim Walz, on Thursday evening activated the state's National Guard. Now, I want to talk about that part for a minute. Tim Walz did not do that, and I will tell you why. Because all these protests that I am doing and that, these protests were funded by George Soros, literally. There's other people involved that are funding these protests to distract you from all of this. Alright, but there is something more than this that is going on. I'm not the right person to tell you what it is, because there is somebody else that is exposing everything else, and I can't tell you who it is. But that person knows what he is doing. And he lives in my city as well. But like I said, I can't tell you who the person is because it's privacy concern. But this person knows more of what's going on than I do, and I could only say that these protests are funded by George Soros and other people that are deep state as well. This is why this is all a distraction right now. But I am doing this because then you'll understand why these people are taking misinformation the wrong way. And this is why all these protests are not what you think they are. But I'm only reading what I can give you because I can't go any further. I only have limited access on my cell phone right now. I don't own a computer or a laptop, so I can only give you what I can give you and doing things. Protesters have also marched in Los Angeles, and of course the other protesters in Los Angeles, they did demand justice for Floyd's death as well. So, and now, I mean, it's a sad shame that this is going on, but then, I don't know, all 50 states are going to end up, I don't know, I mean, some of the states have already begun with the protests, allegedly, and then there are more states that are going to be followed by this. And like I said, I only have limited access on my phone of what I could do, but I could only bring you what I could bring you, and somebody else is doing the exposing of something else, and I can't tell you who it is at all. So I'm sorry that I can only do so much. Leave your comments below. I am out.